I'd like to bring this meeting to order. The Village of Villa Park Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole meeting, February 10th, 2025. Clerk Kornicki, please call the roll.
Trustee Alfano. Trustee Cordova.
Here.
Trustee Corkery. Trustee Kozar.
Here.
Trustee Kumar. Here. Trustee Patrick.
Here.
President Kazone.
Here, and we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our item for discussion tonight is short-term rentals, rules, regulations, and options, and we'll turn it over to Manager Harlan.
Just real quickly before I bring up Director McLaughlin, the Board of Trustees asked for a presentation about this, both because there have been some comments about businesses that exist already in the village, and then what the rules are and where we would like to go from here. So that's the basis of, that's sort of where we were trying to respond to with this presentation. Now, Community Economic Development Director Mark McLaughlin.
Hey, good evening. Yes, so we're here doing a COW presentation on short-term rentals. We had some previous discussion and some questions, and so here is a general overview of rules, regulations, and options. So this is what's happening in Village Park right now. So first off, what is a short-term rental, an STR? They originated as bed and breakfasts. That was the original short-term rental. They provide accommodations within a building that is normally a residence. They are not hotels, and they are typically on the hosting platforms that you guys are familiar with, Airbnb, VRBO, and then there's many, many other hosting platforms. Those are the two I would call most popular. And then I just want to point out, these two, Airbnb specifically, are used as part of the regular conversation when people talk about short-term rentals. They say, I'm going to go rent an Airbnb, just like I say, I'm going to use Kleenex, which is actually tissue paper, or you make a Xerox, which is actually a copy. So Airbnb gets tossed around as a general, this is how people refer to these. I may actually do that sometime in this presentation. So Airbnbs and VRBOs started out as part of the sharing economy. That's similar to Lyft and Uber. It's a vehicle that everybody shares. Here's a house that everybody shares. It is also an individual would rent their own home or a room within their home. And as we know, things evolve, and so now it includes houses that are only for rent. Nobody lives there. There's no full-time resident. It is purely a home for rent. That is the model that is now coming out and being evolved, which is actually the VRBO model, which actually started in 1995. Can we regulate? Yes. A non-home rule municipality can regulate short-term rentals. You have to have reasonable fees, and if there's fines, we're capped at that 750 daily max. We can have a licensing program. You can have zoning requirements, and then obviously to regulate is to either encourage or discourage. Which one do you want to go with? You create regulations, and then we move forward. What is currently allowed? In our zoning ordinance, we regulate the word lodging, which is temporary, 30 days or less. It's allowed by right in the C3 and our MX districts, besides the MXR where it's a special use. So still allowed, not by right, but with a special use. It's also allowed by a special use in our M districts, and it is not allowed in any of our R districts, our office, or our lower intensity commercial districts. That's that C1 and C2, that neighborhood commercial, that node commercial. It's not allowed there as well. The actual definition from our code right there, uses providing temporary lodging for less than 30 days. And then in our zoning ordinance, we also have a strict prohibited activity of lodging as a home occupation. So, taking all that, then how is it regulated? Those are the rules, but how do we regulate it? Lodging is allowed in certain zoning districts. Just established that. The renting of a private residence for less than 30 days is not allowed. The renting of a private residence for 30 days is allowed because it's not a short-term rental. So, we're good. You can rent your home. You can have a lease on your home for 6 months. Short-term rental would be allowed in the same zoning districts as lodging. However, that short-term rental would actually have to be a business. It'd have to be registered, we would have to do an inspection, and you'd have to have some, it's not the Airbnb model, it's significantly more of that VRBO model. You can have this house, that gets rented on a regular basis as long as you're in the allowed zoning districts and that it is not a home. And a bed and breakfast would also be allowed because that's a business. You just happen to have somebody living there, but the primary use is actually the rental. The primary use is not the residence for the couple that runs it, makes breakfast in the morning and whatnot. What's happening around us? So we take a look and see what's everybody else doing. Staff looked at all non-home rule municipalities in Illinois and then started whittling down so we can get to a manageable few. We then carved out the collar counties, Chicagoland, and then we capped it, actually, opposite of cap. We cut it off at 20,000 population or more, which resulted in 13 like-kind municipalities. So these are our peers. That represented DuPage, Cook, Kane, Will, and Lake counties. So also around the region, not just DuPage. What we found was that 11 of the 13 do not allow short-term rentals, and they have no program for them. We do not, nope, we're not doing it. We have no interest in doing it. Talked to a couple of those city directors, never going to happen in their community, so on and so forth. One allows short-term rentals with a license, and one allows short-term rentals with a license, but only in their historic district. So it's a very small geographical area in that community. So that tells us that the majority of our like-kind municipalities do not allow short-term rentals at 85%. What are the financial implications of a short-term rental? So there is a hotel operators and occupation tax, also known as HOOT. It's on the books with Illinois Department of Revenue. Short-term rentals are required to pay HOOT even though they're not a hotel. That is the law. Hosting platforms, such as Airbnb and VRBO, may collect that tax and remit it back to IDOR as a middleman between the person that actually owns that structure, who owes the tax to the state, and then they collect it through the hosting platform and then pass it through to the ODR. Not every hosting platform has that agreement with the Illinois Department of Revenue. Those two do. So it is still obligated on the person that owns it to pay their tax that they are required. The rate in Villa Park is 5% of gross receipts. There's also then the potential for licensing fees. Of those 13 municipalities that we looked at, it was anywhere between 0 and 100. So licensing fee, $0 to $100. So if we did just a real quick revenue projection, if a night at a Airbnb in Villa Park is $100 and your HOOT is 5%, that's $5 a night. An occupancy rate on Airbnb across the platform is 55%. So we could say that an annual HOOT is about $979 per. So let's do a reasonable assumption that one short-term rental in our community would generate maybe $1,000 to the municipality. Currently, we are collecting about $150,000 on our HOOT tax with our 2 hotels that we have in town. So it's a big discrepancy. $1,000, $150,000, and that's on 2 properties. Options. What could we do? We could keep what we're doing, no changes. Continue to utilize code enforcement where areas where it's not allowed, the residential districts, the office, the lower intensity commercial. Collect the HOOT as it comes in. There's no additional staff management. And then we could also work with individuals who want to start a bed and breakfast and gear them toward those MX districts, maybe do an economic development incentive, TIF district, actually like try and incentivize them to come here. What else could we do? We could create a licensing program beyond that business registration. That would most likely form look like the form of a database, establish that fee for licensing, and that would definitely require some additional staff, tracking, inspections, all the stuff that go along with a licensing program. And then the other thing we could do is we could expand the allowable districts that it's in, open it up. It's significant more work on this. We'd have to create a text amendment in all those different areas in our code where it specifically says not allowed, so we'd have to go through that process. potentially create it as a special use in those residential districts instead of just that by right, which I was talking about in the MX districts. And then this one's a little tricky because the majority of the complaints that we get on code enforcement are, there's an Airbnb next to me, I don't like it, please shut it down. So that public hearing for a special use may be, you know, pitchforks and torches. Staff's recommendation, do not create a licensing program now. Do not expand it into residential districts, just like I pointed out. We aren't on a major body of water or near a major tourism attraction. I would much rather encourage a corporate branded hotel to site and do a redevelopment than have 50 short-term rentals that we would have to manage, inspect, and be around the entire village. That would be my staff's recommendation. Let's encourage a hotel and steer away from this. Don't change the code the way it is. A personal favorite short-term rental is Schrute Farms. And on that discussion and all your questions.
Just a couple of quick things. The 11 local that don't allow,
Yeah.
do they have you discussed, do they have trouble with, you know, this type of thing,
VRBO.
VRBOs? Thank you. And do they have a lot of complaints from neighbors?
The handful that I spoke with do not have an abundance of them. They have regular code enforcement to shut them down. Okay. It's not the majority of their work, it's just there.
Yeah. And then do they, the ones that do, or the ones, if this was to go, we have to follow insurance regulations, or that would be on them, and we'd have to
That would be
follow
on them,
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
that
we'd
could
have
be-
to make sure that they got their insurance, and
As part of a licensing program, that's what
we would have to do that.
you would expect to, otherwise, because then the village is putting their stamp on it,
Right.
that we are now licensing this. You're, you know, encouraged now to stay here.
Right.
So,
Okay,
yep,
good. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Trustee Kumar?
I'm one of those who's living next to one of these particular short-term rental facilities. And what I've found is, and I'm totally cognizant of people trying to be able to pay a mortgage, kind of make their way due, except if they are not anywhere near this property, a lot of violations are happening in terms of the garbage can is out for the whole week. The garage was open for the whole week, and, you know, there is no accountability. So I'm actually not in favor of this particular thing, and I like the code the way it is at this point. And I do agree we need more in terms of hotel taxes from a regular hotel facility if we can find a place in our town to construct those. And I'm not, but there are 5 of these facilities kind of regularly running. If you just go on and look at rentals in Villa Park. There are 5 of them that I saw this morning that will allow me to rent as quickly as tomorrow. And it has been a bit of an issue because, one, in a residential area, we have certain codes that hold. And the renter does not necessarily know all our codes when they go into renting this particular place. However, at the same time, I do feel that if there is some old lady trying to rent her house in order to keep her mortgage payment, or some, you know, person after retirement or something, we're still giving them a way to rent their house. It just will be in a more long-term situation. We're not wanting a short-term rental situation. Am
Yeah.
I correct?
Yeah, and so as a follow-up to that, we are well aware of properties because the little old lady has called us and said, I would like to do this. And we say, great, as long as you have a lease that is longer than 30 days, you can rent your room. You don't have to rent the whole house. You can rent a room within your home for more than 30 days. We absolutely know that's happening.
Okay, and also about that, many of these are short-term rentals, but as we're discussing this, even the shorter, long-term rentals have brought about some issues in our town, and a lot of the residents, especially on Villa Avenue that came in once to discuss those things,
Sure.
have had issues with those. So now, how does the law pertain to those rentals in terms of our state? Is it, because we're not on home rule, are we restricted by the state? Is there a lease that we can require that's longer than a month?
No,
No.
no, no. 30 days is that cutoff.
That cutoff. So 30 days is the maximum we can require any renter of their own property.
Is the minimum.
Minimum.
Minimum we require. If it's less than 30 days, then it's a short-term rental. It has to be more
No,
than.
no, I'm not asking the definition of short-term. Even though, like, someone, is it possible for the city to require a longer lease on properties that are rented?
The state defines lodging as less than 30 days.
Okay, okay. So it's both ways.
It is, yeah. It's
Cutoff is
used.
30 days.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, anyone else? Trustee Cordova?
Do we have a mechanism in place that, I mean, for someone to go on, excuse me, just for someone to go on like Airbnb or VRBO or even like Craigslist or whatever, do we have a mechanism in place that can catch some of this? Or is it more of someone needs to file a complaint and
Yeah.
then we actually have to have some kind of code enforcement to do that?
Yeah, so the majority of code enforcement in Villa Park is complaint-based. There's obviously the cases where staff sees things, work without a permit, you're building a garage, there's no permit, we tackle all that stuff all day long. But one of these type of uses, which is mostly happening on the weekends or whatnot, it comes in via complaint-based. We have tried to go through some of the Airbnb and hosting platforms, but none of the addresses are listed until you actually make that reservation. I don't think I have the spending authority to make, 5 reservations at the Airbnb, but still, like, we are restricted on what we can do. We have looked at a couple, and we're like, oh, we know that house, so, like, we've gone and figured that out, but it's fairly difficult to actually try and find where these actually are on a property base, so we can actually send a letter to them, because it's so locked down before you actually get to make a reservation. So, but all the complaint-based, yeah, we handle those through code enforcement, we have a procedure for that.
And, what,
Trustee Cordova?
No, I'm good. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Trustee,
and what is when we file a complaint, what are the consequences to the owner or operator of this kind of,
Sure. It's the same thing for any code enforcement. It is a notice that we received a complaint that you're operating lodging. We don't call it Airbnb, lodging. Are you not? No? Okay. We got a complaint, so why do they think that? And you have to have that conversation. What's your address? Let's look you up, that kind of stuff. If they, yes, we are, then it's, you have to stop, and here you have to stop within this amount of time. And if you don't, then we send you to adjudication, which is a court, and then the judge can decide if there's a fine or not.
okay.
okay, anyone else? Trustee Kozar?
How many rooms do we have in Villa Park that are available? So, the Motel 6 and so forth,
Oh,
rooms for rent,
I do not have that number right now.
okay. Can you go back to that 1,000 versus 150 on the hoot?
Yep.
Mostly just because I like saying hoot, but talk to me about that again. So, can you just go over what you said again on
Sure,
that?
sure. Assumptions are made so I can get to a revenue projection. If a night at an Airbnb in this community is $100 and Hoot is 5%, that's $5 of Hoot tax a night. The occupancy rate of an Airbnb across the platform is 55%. So at 55% of 365 at $5 a night is approximately $979.
Okay.
So rounded it up, let's call it 1,000, right? So
And then our
reasonable assumption,
Sure.
$1,000.
$1,000. And then our current hotels,
Yeah. So that's on the books. You can check that in the audit. So $150,000 came in last year.
okay. So our current hotels are making us about $150,000 a year.
Correct.
And then each Airbnb we would figure would be just on their taxing,
Correct.
would be $1,000.
That's correct. Yep. That's specifically for Hoot. Yep.
And both the licensed hotels and the Airbnbs are being charged at the same rate.
That's correct. Mhm. Yeah, it's total gross receipts. So you have to calculate that first before you can actually apply the tax. Yes. And that's all done at the point of sale level.
As a follow-up to this, if you could just email to me or the board how many rooms that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if you know, based on those rooms and the current revenue that's coming in, what the general occupancy rate is.
Okay.
Most hotels are somewhere in the neighborhood of 97%. That's what
Yeah.
they like to run at, but.
Yeah, I'd have to dive into that, but yeah, I could get it.
Okay.
Do you know roughly what the occupancy rates are at the two hotels?
I do not.
Do they? I mean, seems like they're full. They're pretty full.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you? No, I don't remember. Okay. Trustee Kozar.
So I own a few properties. I don't have any Airbnbs, but I own a few properties in a few municipalities that do have Airbnbs. And I've looked at what they require, and it's probably similar to what your research indicated. For all of those, there's a pretty strict enforcement rules and guidelines. Would you say that the ones that you looked at here, and that are similar to us, have strict guidelines in place?
Yeah, we pulled the licenses and those license programs from the municipalities that do have it. So we have that code, we have those license programs. And yes, they're annual inspections. One of them had an inspection every 30 days, which is different than the annual. So I mean, it was almost a staff burden for that license. So I wonder if it's a discouragement because you're asking them to, village staff to always be at your property. That's how I took that one. Insurance. It was ran very similar to our business registration process. Very, very similar. Where who's your first call of contact for emergency? You have to have exit signs, but not sprinkled. There's a whole bunch of other building code things that they put into the actual license because it's not truly applicable to the IBC. So I think they stole some of that stuff, but it's definitely not easy. Yeah.
And we could, if the board was so inclined to go ahead with something like that, and I recognize we're not taking a vote, we're just exploring
Yep.
ideas. You could come up with the cost burden on the village for what those inspections would be.
Yeah.
And, what it would cost, and then how much we could charge as a licensing fee.
Right.
Because there's no limit to it. I mean, we could charge $100, or we could charge $10,000,
Reasonable, so, I don't know what that is, though, but you're right. 10,000 until somebody challenges us.
Right.
What's reasonable?
Because the law
Yep.
says you could charge a reasonable fee.
Reasonable fee.
And it would be reasonable that the village would be able to cover all their costs and then make some profit off it.
Right, exactly, right. The whole point of a licensing program has the ability to say, yep, this is village approved, and it's a revenue generator.
And
If it's just a revenue generator, well, then, come on. But if it's just saying the village is here, well, there's a lot of work that goes into that, too. They should be both.
And in theory, that license could be easily revoked if somebody was, the example was their garbage can is left out all the time, or, the tenants of the Airbnb aren't following the rules. That license just could be immediately revoked.
That's correct.
After due process, of course.
Yeah, fix it. You got 30 days, and if you don't, then we pull it. That's correct. Yep. Just like any of our licenses, which, we have a number of them.
Okay, thank you.
Due process, just
Yes,
chiming in, due process would require a hearing on that revocation of the
Right,
license
that's
as
why
well.
I say due
Correct.
process. You
Yeah.
couldn't just go in and, Mark doesn't like it, so. If it were only that easy. But, no, some sort of due process where they get a hearing and,
Yeah.
Opportunity to be heard, yes.
absolutely. Okay.
Trustee Kumar.
You said in certain districts, it's kind of in our code allowed, correct? So are those districts being licensed? Is it through licensing or is it just allowed?
We have not had anybody come to us yet and say, I want to do this. Yeah. I think what you guys are seeing out there are the true Airbnb where they're renting a house, but they're not doing it as a business. The ones that we've sent letters and violation notices to were that case. So I haven't seen someone come say, this is a house and I'm going to rent it as a short-term rental, full-time, and I'm not going to live here. That's what's allowed, which is, as I pointed out, the VRBO model. I have a cabin in the woods and it's only for rent.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But in our code, it is allowed to
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
and there is a process, and there is a licensing fee.
It's not a license, but we run it through our business registration, which isn't a license. But then we say, okay, great. Who are we going to contact just like on any business? It's the same thing we would run if somebody wanted to come to the unit next to the Jewel. Same idea.
Okay. I mean, if, like a restaurant suddenly buys a house and makes it a restaurant, you do
Right.
the same.
We would do the same thing, exactly.
Yeah, same
That is
thing,
correct.
right.
Yeah, so you can see
So
there,
in
the
Lombard,
black
yeah.
dots are where it is allowed by right, and then the 3 at the end are the special use. Yeah. Yeah, we have no problem with those. Those districts make sense as the way we have it right now, the MX districts around our commercial corridor, or commercial nodes. It makes plenty of sense why the code was written the way it was written.
Yeah, because you have a lot of commercial, residential on the second floor.
But even there, you're only allowed if you go through a business process, correct?
Yep.
It is not just allowed, like, you open up your own thing
Correct.
over there. Correct,
Yep.
okay. And would those also generate the same type of revenue?
They would.
The hoot, they would still
would.
generate the hoot tax?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, they would.
I just want to clarify what is and what is not allowed.
Yeah.
And I understand keeping the residential districts as is, and I understand the law the way it is here, so, okay.
Your
Just
your
go.
suggestion is to encourage more traditional hotel operators to come in, right?
Yes, that is staff's recommendation, yeah.
Are there any buildings in Villa Park that somebody could just take over and make a hotel? Or are you suggesting you would help them find the appropriate parcel of land and then they would build it?
Both. We have some buildings that are underutilized that with an interior remodel could be a hotel. Absolutely. The second one, obviously, we have property throughout our corridors that we would like to see to redevelop, and there's many opportunities for hotels as well.
Okay. Do you think if the board were not to, and again, I recognize nothing is before the board, we're just talking about it, but I think you said you're aware of 5 of them, or somebody up here said they're aware of 5, at least 5, anyway.
Let me
Right.
clarify. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this morning I I only checked Airbnb. I did not check VRBO. I do not know if but there are 5 operating in Villa Park, Illinois at this point in our town, if I wanted to rent today.
Is that what you think too? There's somewhere like a half a dozen of them
Yeah.
operating?
Yep, it's about
Sounds
right. It's
reasonable.
about right. Yep.
Okay. So do you think if the board were not to regulate that,
Okay.
to say, we're not going to propose legislation to allow it, and we're going to keep it status quo, which means it's illegal, do you think people will continue to do it?
Well, I would encourage then people that do not like it to then let us know what the addresses are, because we don't know where they are. That's our problem, because we don't have access to the information. The residents that are next to it are aware of it, not me. And if they have a problem with it, it's a complaint-based code enforcement. So,
What's the enforcement mechanism to that? So say your neighbor, I think Deepa gave the example that one of her neighbors does it. She would have to call code enforcement and say, hey, somebody's operating what I
and we would
believe
have to know
be
the
an
address. Yep.
Airbnb at 123, West Street.
Correct.
And then you would send over somebody from code enforcement and maybe knock at the door. And if somebody comes out and you say, hey, are you,
Yeah,
the
how you
owner, are
doing?
you
Yep.
renting this? And then if they say that, no, we're renting it through Airbnb, then your code enforcement would be the witness there, right?
Yeah, and say, okay, by the way, that's not allowed. Talk them through it and say,
Yeah.
we got a complaint and we got to let you know you can't do this here. The code specifically says it is
Right.
prohibited. You can't do it. And go
So
from there.
the Airbnb tenant, you wouldn't evict them immediately?
No.
Right, This
And
would be between basically the village and the
Yeah.
homeowner.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, property owner, correct. Yep.
But in that case, your code enforcement person could be the witness. And when we talk of due process, you
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
know,
they-
that would be the witness that stood before the tribunal to say, yes, I witnessed this.
Yes, they testify at adjudication monthly.
But if
Yep.
it's being done on the weekend, in the example that Deepa gave, it would have to be Deepa, presumably. Not only Deepa, but I mean, the neighbor, the
Yeah.
complainant would then need to be the witness.
They would if we weren't able to transition that to staff, which is what we try to do. We try and get it to be that it's staff witnessing, yeah, so that the complainant can stay anonymous, actually. It's actually a technique we do to not have feuds.
Sure. Yeah, the best situation would be have code enforcement.
Yep.
Be the witness and
That's correct.
just
Yep.
deal with it straight through the village.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else?
Just a quick one. Is there a way that a municipality can work with an Airbnb, VRBO to have restrictions? Or is that, it's kind of,
I
anyone
think-
can go and,
So, in doing my own research to figure out all this stuff and in communication with legal on some of the state laws so we can get here, I dove and went into the rabbit hole of short-term rentals on a bunch of hosting platforms. I think Airbnb is ready, willing, and able to work with municipalities to then restrict it on their level so that it's not even on the site.
Right.
You just have to, I haven't started that, so I just have to, because I didn't know where this was going to go, but I think I'd have to reach out, have that communication, that open dialogue, and say, here's what's going on, and here's our code. If you can allow it to be rented, meeting these parameters, have at it, but these are the restrictions. Mhm. I think the technology exists, and I think
Yeah.
that Airbnb specifically is open to that kind of relationship with municipalities. I don't know about VRBO or the other ones, but that particular one had some language associated with that.
That 5%, the hoot, if it's through Airbnb or VRBO, is it up to Airbnb to pay it to us, or is it up to the owner of the property to do that?
Sure, it is the owner's responsibility to pay their tax. However, Airbnb and VRBO have agreements with Illinois Department of Revenue to be the middleman, to collect it from that initial online booking, to then put it toward IDOR, so that it's not the responsibility any longer because they've got that agreement.
But then, you had that in here, and then, does Illinois give that to us, or do we have to go after them to get it?
Well, we get a payment from IDOR.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's all taken care of. So if there is somebody that's going through one of the platforms, and then it will go through them and get to us, okay.
Just like those hotels, they pay directly to IDOR because
Okay.
they're hotels. But when it's just property owner who doesn't
Yeah.
maybe have that sophistication, Airbnb and VRBO have said, we'll be your middleman, we'll get it up there.
Okay. Trustee Kumar?
So far, we are not receiving any revenue in taxes from Airbnbs. Am I correct?
We would be receiving taxes from Airbnb because it's Airbnb. So if they booked through there, they send it to IDOR. Even though they
Already?
shouldn't be there, because that was Trustee Cordova's question, right? But even if they're not allowed to be there and they haven't been shut down, if they're collecting tax at the booking level, it is getting funneled through IDOR.
So have we gotten any of those taxes?
I would have to assume yes, because Airbnb does pass it through, and you, as you pointed out, we have 5.
Yes, okay, so
Yeah.
we have been getting those taxes.
I would
They are-
assume so, yep. Now,
You would
none of it's itemized, because that's not how it works, but yes.
Is there a way to find out from Airbnb if they are paying anything towards our account?
Possibly, but Airbnb has the agreement with IDOR, so that, it's supposed to work that way. Anything that comes into Illinois is supposed to go through.
And they would automatically send it?
Correct.
Okay, so it's, I mean, where, it's an information I think it's good to have as to, have we been getting that at all in the first place? It also tells us how rented it is if we get that number.
If
because
we can get that granular,
Yeah,
if, right.
granular, yeah, that's a question. So it would be nice to have that information, and maybe when we're contacting Airbnb, it's a good idea to kind of ask them that question
Yeah.
before saying, we're now shutting it down.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I have no problem either working with Chuck through IDOR or just directly to Airbnb, yeah.
Yeah, it would be I am still in favor personally of shutting it down, because I think it's not as regulated as it should be. And there are complaints around me, all the information some of the complaints come from me, some of the complaints come from neighbors around. So, it is some concern. And I did have an issue where someone was up at 2 a.m. screaming on a phone, and I called the police actually, and, on that house. And so, because I didn't know what else to do when they're 2 on a Wednesday night, a Saturday night, yes. 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night, if someone's on the deck screaming away at I don't know who, I felt that, So I do think that happened, in the property next to my house. So, given that there can be issues for these properties in a residential area, they're not as regulated as would be in a commercial
Right.
B&B. So I am considerably against such things, obviously. And so I would want to stop it. But at the same time, I do not want to lose tax revenue if they've already rented it. So I want to know if we have gotten the money from what's been rented so far, because it belongs to my city, is how I think of it. So before we stop it, we got to make sure we got what's our...
Paid.
Got paid what's our just due. So
Understood.
that's what I'm thinking, so...
Okay, anyone else on the board? Okay, open up the public comments. Clerk Konecki, anyone signed in?
No, and nobody.
Okay, anyone in the public comments on short-term rentals?
Not necessarily comment.
You come up, you come up. Just state your name, please. Yeah, thank you.
523 South Yale Avenue, and I would be interested in getting access for the residents to either preview that online or be able to have a printed copy.
Of this presentation, it's online.
It's online.
It's online, yeah.
And where can we find it?
Under the agendas.
Oh,
if you go
okay,
on there
so
and then
not, okay, under
download
the
the
agenda for
packet.
this particular
Committee of the
meeting, not
whole.
necessarily on the village website in any particular economic.
Yeah, it's on the website, for the agendas, and then for the cow meeting.
Right, but it's not under economic development,
No.
under short-term rentals.
No.
You'd have to look specifically at this meeting.
Yeah, correct.
Super, thank
Yeah,
you.
Yeah, you can download a PDF on that.
Hi, Tina Constados. I just want to say, I did a little bit of digging and poking around on the internet too. Chicago is like one of the hardest places to get Airbnb set up. They have a huge system that you got to go through. I just printed something with just a few things where you have to have licensing. They also have to have insurance that has to be $1 million. The homeowner does, as well as they said that the renter has to have insurance as well. Property inspections, zoning, taxes, safety, it has to be their primary residence. They even have food handling ordinances for it. So it's like, there's a lot to it. I didn't realize till I started researching it, so I think that if we were to consider it, it would have to be a pretty in-depth program that looks at all options and avenues and with the licensing and whatnot, So I just wanted to let you guys know that there's a lot involved in it. It seems to be, it's not as clear cut as just go on Airbnb, put your posting up, and hey, you're renting out your house. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Tina.
Mark Boughton, Villa Park resident. I was just wondering when the last time you guys looked or made a change to that lodging law? Or if anybody knows.
Would you like me to answer it?
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Yeah, that is from when the zoning ordinance was adopted in 2018.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Excuse me, can you please sign in? Could you- Yes, please.
My name's Amanda, Mark's wife. We actually were one of the Airbnbers that was up on the site last year. I just wanted to say that it was a wonderful experience for us. Our property is, it's a separate dwelling, but it's on our property. It's not a full house that we were renting out. You know, it was, I had nothing but rave reviews from everybody. Through Airbnb, you're able to vet people. So if they don't have, like, if they didn't have reviews, if they didn't have verified information, I rejected them. You know, I didn't allow them in there. We never had any problems. On all my reviews, people were just raving about basically the community and not knowing what a nice small town this was. And not only that is, I would tend to disagree that we are actually very close to a large attraction in the city of Chicago. And I had a lot of people come in that were visiting Chicago and visiting, you know, areas in and around the town. Obviously, we have 3 young boys, you know, we're working class people who pay taxes. I of course don't want to be overstepping on any rule. We didn't know about the ordinance when we first started. You know, we took it very seriously. You know, and I just, you know, want to put it out there that I understand there's probably some things that have happened where it hasn't been a good experience. But I think there's ways to kind of work around that. And obviously, we'd hate to lose that privilege of permanently of, you know, not being able to utilize that. And it was obviously a big part of our income, a good part of our income. I mean, again, we have 3 young boys, and it is not, it's not cheap, as I'm sure everybody who has kids knows. We'll even see about that, but you know, it's I pro-choice on Airbnbs for sure. So just wanted to put that out there for
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.
Hi, Leslie Allison, a Villa Park resident. I would like to pass out samples of Airbnb reviews for Villa Park's units in the past year. They do an overall rating of Airbnbs, which goes up to 5 stars. Villa Park currently has a 4.9 rating. So I'd like to share some of these reviews that we've gotten in just the last year. I'm just going to throw out a couple of these here. Homes, hosts, neighborhood amenities were all a delight. That was from somebody in Denver, Colorado. Exceeded my family's expectations for our Christmas vacation. Great quiet neighborhood. Walking distance to the Villa Park train station. Huge plus, exclamation point. That was from Tampa, Florida. Just moving through, cute historic place, well appointed, very clean. The area is safe and there is walking trail and decent coffee shop right down the street. Florida. Home is located in a residential, very quiet and very safe neighborhood in Villa Park. The setting is beautiful with a small park and lagoon. That's from Chile. Very nice place, small apartment, but has everything you need. Clean, beautiful, comfortable bed and sofa. The host met with early check-in. Everything was just fine. The view of the lake is gorgeous, cozy, and cute. We are delighted and will come back again. That's from Kyiv, Ukraine. We're internationally known here in Villa Park. We're drawing in people from all over the world. We're bringing in revenue, not just from Airbnb alone, but people are using our restaurants, our bars, dare I say, maybe gambling in some of our locations. I would say that your numbers are probably a little low as far as the annual income that these short-term rentals are bringing in, probably closer to 10 grand. So that might up your numbers as far as revenue is concerned. I'd also be curious to know how many complaints the village has received in the last year from this, and also if we could do a study on long-term rental complaints versus these short-term complaints. Because I'll tell you what, it's a lot harder to get out a tenant who has a one-year lease than somebody that's coming and staying for a weekend. I'd also like to know the difference in complaints between Airbnbs and the noise and the bars in the area. How many complaints come in from those places of business? Finally, I hear what you're talking about, bringing in more hotels. That would be fantastic. We do have that North Avenue corridor that's ripe for new development. I know that we're doing wonderful things on Roosevelt and also our downtown area, and I can't wait for all these changes, and they're coming, man, they are. And it's just going to bring more people into this village. But right now, when I count the number of hotels that we have in the area, we have Bear Rabbit, we have Motel 6, and we have the Sleep Inn at Roosevelt and Villa. Probably not the places that some of these people that left these wonderful reviews are thinking about staying. I really think that you should think about this carefully. I can tell you, I've done some research. Airbnb regulates their hosts and their guests. They do almost all the work for you. And if there are complaints, there is a number. If you go on their very front page of Airbnb, there is an area where you can click that neighbors can file complaints directly with Airbnb. So
Okay,
they're
we have to-
doing
have
everything.
to wrap it up here.
Okay, they're doing everything that they can to make this feasible for both the guests as well as the people. And can I have just a few seconds more?
2. Okay.
The top 10 reasons why Airbnbs are good for our village. Offers residents a way to earn extra money, financially enhances small businesses already in our area, additional tax revenue for the village, annual registration fees, prorated to space and accommodations per unit, restaurants, bars, and even gambling. Airbnb works with local government to take the action in advance or in an event of a law enforcement necessity. Airbnb has a double-blind review system so host and guest can rate their experience, which is published on their public profiles to limit bookings only to guests who
Okay,
host with a positive review.
Can you speed it up a little bit, please?
I'm talking as fast as I can.
5 minutes.
Airbnb offers free or discounted noise sensors to help deter noise, as well as carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors. Airbnb offers fire protection, education to the hosts so that they have guidance on how to make their units more safely. Suspends or bans guests who violate policies such as throwing disruptive parties. Suspends or removes listings that fail to meet quality standards or causes neighborhood disturbances. And number 10, simply put, Airbnb shine a bright, friendly spotlight on our village with the tourists from around the globe.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks.
for your time. And I'll sign this real quick. Good. I'm going.
Hi, everyone. Patrice Gallagher, Villa Park resident. Interesting topic. It's a problem like across the U.S. and cities and towns. And everybody's trying to figure out how they're going to, how they're going to deal with it. And it's a real challenge. I'm wondering why we brought the subject up here. And I'm wondering, I don't know if we're allowed to ask questions and get an answer, but Trustee Kumar, you said, you saw 5 looking like today. I'm just wondering how many are there out there in Villa Park? Does anybody know? I don't know is this where we can answer
Ask
each
your
other?
questions, we'll see what we can do about answering them.
Okay. And I'm wondering what the nature, is there a pattern of complaints? Some people just want to complain because get off my lawn, that mentality. And I'm wondering if they're legit complaints, like Trustee Kumar. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm neutral about it. I think about the people that need the income. Regulating can be a challenge. I think that there is a way to regulate. I just don't know now. Go ahead.
No, just keep going.
Oh, okay. I think that's all I have to say. I'm not sure how I feel about it, and I appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Trustee Kumar. Yeah, no, I just wanted to say. I think some of your questions, go ahead.
So, Steve Della Rosa, 300 South Summit. I look forward to seeing how this evolves in terms of within our community and how we go about acting on this. Because I think that stifling somebody's way to earn an income on their property they own, or maybe their family manages for a senior citizen who's passed away and who doesn't want to sell a property, but wants to be able to use that property in town to generate income, I think that's wonderful. I have family members that do Airbnbs in their communities, and that's all I want to say. I think it's something that we need to look at and to see how it can benefit our village people who live here, who have established a home and have a property that they can earn income on. I don't want to see that stopped. And I'll sign in right now.
Thanks. Well, I think staff is probably going to be looking at this. What, if we do regulate it, what the costs would be to the village, and just see if it's worthwhile to regulate. Because whatever regulations we do, Mr. McLaughlin is going to have to be doing some of the work on it. And, he's got a staff that's pretty busy right now. So probably you would be looking at maybe hiring another person. And we have to make sure that if we do regulate it, and if we do have people inspecting and looking at insurance and things like that, that it's worthwhile to the village, that we can charge enough and get enough revenue from it. So that will be looked at. Trustee Kumar.
I have a few things to say. I did bring this topic to have this discussion. It was my idea to bring the discussion up because, as I said, I also wanted to hear the other side of the story. So I am very glad that the two members who have owned and operated at Airbnb came out to have their side of the story said at this meeting. Because you can see it from one side, you have to see it from all sides, as I said, when you look at any of these things. My gut feeling is one aspect that those two members said is that they live on the property. This kind of changes my mindset a little bit as to they live near enough by, in a radius. And I know that it's very hard to contact the member that's renting next to my house, but it's very easy to contact someone who lives on the property with respect to a property. So my thought process might be also if we can regulate to that aspect, that is a possibility to continue an Airbnb. But it's a thought process. I'm not, thinking about that right away. But that's an aspect I think that really plays into the possibility, because if you're near enough to address the complaints or address the problems, your garbage can is not going to be sitting out there. Your garage door isn't open for 2 weeks where you don't know how to contact the person to tell them, it is open. All of those aspects that are a problem, noise complaint, you're going to hear about it right away because you're living right next door. So that's more of a bed and breakfast kind of Airbnb, honestly, because they're right there. Versus, someone who's not, lives in New York, owns a property here, who knows if they're gonna come to address a complaint or not. So it's tricky for staff, certainly, it's tricky for us to address it, but I think it's good to start that discussion to see how it goes, one way or another.
Okay, anyone else up here? Okay, last comment?
Steve Corona, 332 East Plymouth. So I just kind of have like a recent experience from last summer. So me and my friends, we went to we had plans to go to Miami, and it was like a week vacation, and I'm sorry, it was a week and a half. So just from that, there was a huge tornado, which canceled everything, and then we tried to get our money back because it was a lot of money. And we went through like the whole like complaints and Airbnb and everything. We didn't get any of the money back because that guy was an investor and he had bought 30 properties in Miami. So I think you guys also have to think about how there's investors out there that just want to get into this, and it could affect like people like you guys. Like maybe you guys are desperate for that extra money, but you guys are going to bring in bad people as well because you guys just want that extra income. But I know Airbnb is a huge investment for people that want to invest into that. So you guys also have to think about that, how like, so.
Good, thank you. Can you please sign in?
Yeah.
Please? Okay. Okay, anyone else up here? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Trustee Cordova, we have a second. Trustee Kumar, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, anyone opposed? Okay, we'll close our COW and be back in a few minutes for our regular meeting.